He's Doc Emrick, the lead play-by-play announcer for NBC's NHL coverage. He'll be on the call. Game 2, Blues Bruins, tomorrow night, 8 Eastern on NBC. He's won the Sports Emmy, I believe, 6 times, and Doc joins us now on the program. Good morning, Doc. How are you?
I'm good. Could Kevin out-foul shoot you? I don't know. I think it would be an interesting contest.
Doc, you know the answer to that question.
I know. No, he could not. The answer is he could not, and half the NBA could not.
I want
It'd
you...
be interesting to parade them in there and have them try.
When are you coming into the man cave? If I had you shoot 25 free throws, Doc Emrick, how many free throws are you making?
I would send a surrogate to take them for me, and his name would be Brian Boucher. Because we had that contest in Washington where the practice floor for the Wizards is right next to the rink at the morning skate. And without a warm-up, Eddie Olczyk and I and Brian Boucher all took 3 foul shots. Eddie and I were 0 for 3, and Brian did not even hit the rim on 3. It stripped the net all 3 times without a warm-up over the summer, and I don't know how long it had been. And we did get tape of it.
But you're from Indiana. You got to be able to shoot, Doc.
I shoot like Ollie in Hoosiers. And there was a poster on the wall at our high school gym in Lofoten, Indiana, on how to shoot foul shots, and it showed definitively that's how you did it. But it was the 1950s, and so that was how it was. By the way, Dan, thanks for relating that story on Bill Buckner, because I had never heard that before. And last night we were preparing to say something about Bill. Eventually, Mike Tirico did during our telecast, as we had earlier in the playoffs in Boston when John Havlicek passed. And in doing the research and library work never came personal experience like you related. But you had mentioned that he never struck out, and we went through the 2+ decades he was in the majors. Not only did he never strike out more than 40 times, he never walked more than 40 times. When he went up there, he was a hitter.
I don't know if he ever struck out 3 times in a game as an entire career, over 2,500 games. I don't think he struck out 3 times in a game.
Can you imagine that? I mean, that's day in and day out playing Major League Baseball, and all the tricks that the guys on the mound have, and you're still not getting whipped. Well, it was marvelous, and I just wanted you to know that and the Mitch Williams, I've never heard those stories before.
Yeah, just to be in the locker room.
To relate.
And you've been around this, though, Doc, that we focus on the winners, but it's how the losers handle losing that always fascinates me. And,
yes.
And hockey, those guys, they battle, they beat each other up, and then they shake hands whether they want to or not. But, there's admiration in battle when I watch hockey. And, you have guys who have had some, great moments, but you've also had some guys who have had, they've been the GOAT, and not in the good way.
No. And Steve Smith wound up putting the puck in his own net off his goaltender, and it is forever remembered in Edmonton, despite the fact that they won all those championships. It's one of those things that he was remembered for, but yet he's had a glowing career since, not only as a player, but also as a member of a coaching staff. Those things, I guess, just never leave the consciousness, but you try never to let them ruin your life. And the sad thing is that sports fans tend to be sharks.
Yeah.
And they can cause your family to suffer. And that was always sad to know that he had to move out of New England all the way out to Idaho for that. But it was a great story that you told, not only about him and Mitch Williams, and I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
We were doing research yesterday, and it never trumps a personal story like you related, and I'm just glad you did, because those are things that you continue to try to do to make sure that Bill Buckner is not remembered for just one thing.
He's Doc Emrick. He called last night's Game 1. He's got Game 2 tomorrow night, the Blues and the Bruins. If I would have told you in October the Blues and Bruins would be playing for the Cup, you would have said?
No, it would be Tampa Bay and somebody. But no, I wouldn't have expected that it would have been the Bruins. I would have said, well, it's probably going to be an open tournament and 16 get in, because it's always that way. But by November or early December, I would have said it's going to be Tampa Bay, the favorite to get to the final, which they were all the way through. But I don't think anyone would have given St. Louis much of a chance, especially by the time we got to January, and they were dead last. They moved from 31st to 12th from the 1st of January right up to early April. It was a magnificent story and attributed to not only some splendid goaltending, but the unification of the team under a coach named Craig Berube, whose term of play in the NHL was courageous and fistic. And one source claims that in the history of the NHL, he had more fighting majors than any other player, including Tiger Williams. That's the kind of life he led as a player. And he became this very cerebral coach that knows how to motivate players and rally the team and turn them into the second best team in the playoffs as of today, because they're trailing in the final series 1-0.
It feels like the tough guys are disguised a little bit more, Doc, that you're not just out there for one thing, that there's more nuance to being a tough guy in the NHL. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yes. Fighting is gone now, especially in the playoffs. When I first started doing NHL games in the playoffs in 1980, it would be nothing to have 85 playoff games and 85 total fights in the playoffs. This year, we've had 81 games and 3 fights. And this will be the record if it stays at that. I mean, the low number that we've had in recent years, the lowest has been 7. So just to give you an idea of that. So now the guys that are the courage players are the ones that go flailing into the corners and hit continuously. And we have 2 teams full of guys that do just that, which is why this is such an engrossing, entertaining series. We have big body guys that have been on teams that have gotten to the final. So maybe there'll be a trend now to having larger players that can withstand the punishment that you need to get through 4 rounds and win a championship. There are smaller teams or teams that have smaller players that have gone by the wayside in the first round or second round this year. And here are 2 of the bigger, stronger, more aggressive teams that have gotten to the final. So in terms of what it takes to do now, the fighters in the sport are pretty much gone. But the guys that are aggressive and really assert themselves, they're very much there, and they're very important to their teams.
How much hockey did you play growing up?
None. I grew up in rural Indiana, and there were 2 indoor arenas in the state of Indiana. One was the Coliseum in Fort Wayne, where a team called the Comets and a team called the Pistons in the NBA played. And there was the Indianapolis Fairgrounds Coliseum. That was it for the state of Indiana when I grew up. That was my excuse. And the other was I wasn't very athletic, Dan. I learned to shoot underhand foul shots in a little town in Indiana. And there was not a whole lot else. But when I saw my first game in Fort Wayne, I became fascinated with the sport and obsessed with it. That was a long time ago.
Are you the most famous person from your hometown?
I don't know. Chester Troyer created a bunch of hybrid seeds, and there were a lot of farmers that needed Chester Troyer's seeds to raise corn. I think he would have probably been far more productive than I was, but he also grew up in LaFountain, Indiana.
Are you the most decorated guy, though, with hockey? You know, you've been around all these players. I mean, Gretzky had a pretty good career, but you're more decorated than Gretzky, aren't you, with all your awards?
I don't know. No, Wayne set so many records in I don't know, 40 or 50 records. No, by no means. And Wayne can go anywhere he wants. I still need a pass. and I have a pass that I'm going to be wearing around my neck to go to practice with a big smile on my face because every day at a rink is fun for me.
Paulie, would you check on Chester Troyer if he ever called a Stanley Cup final?
Chester E., the Corn King Troyer, never called a Stanley Cup final.
Okay.
Never. Not even one.
Not one?
Not one. He did a lot of work in the corn industry. No NHL final. No Stanley Cup final.
You guys are priceless. I should mention that today there's an 8-game winning streak for Boston. Tuukka Rask has now stopped 238 of his last 249 shots, and that compares favorably compared to McLovin on Seton the last time I was there.
Wow.
And I saw firsthand Seton beat McLovin on the floor of the man cave.
Wow. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yes.
It was during a commercial break. Now, I realized McLovin didn't have the best equipment in goal to stop him with.
Well, McLovin is a Roy type.
Yes, he is.
More Roy type.
Minus the French. But you're right. He is. He is. It's fabulous, though. You guys are so much fun.
Thank you, Doc. And tell everybody we said hello, and we'll be watching tonight.
Outstanding. Take care.
That's Doc Emrick, lead play-by-play announcer for NBC's NHL coverage.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.